Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Kaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, welcome all of you all, and I really thank you all for your enthusiastic participation and being there. So, we will move ahead today. As you know, last time we were discussing, and the three key projects that Prabhupada was busy, and it was very close to his heart, were Mayapur, Juhu, right? These are the very key projects, and uh, one more project that was very close to his heart, and he was very keen that it happens very fast, was the Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan. So we're in the year 1974. We're talking about March, and that's when Prabhupada was there again in Vrindavan, and he was getting very restless that why is Krishna Balram temple taking so much of time, right? So Prabhupada, since the very beginning, had these ideas in his mind. So Govind Devji's temple has beautiful architecture, beautiful. So originally it was 7 story. Then when Aurangzeb came and he started damaging all temples, and he even because the Govindji's temple could be seen from such a distance that it was higher than Aurangzeb's palace also. So his ego had got affected and he had damaged that temple. But the architecture was very beautiful. So Prabhupada had that in mind. So uh, Surbi, who was the architect for the Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan, was given very specific instructions that you need to incorporate some of this in the Krishna Balram temple. And Prabhupada was very keen that in Vrindavan we will have Krishna Balram only, because there were other temples of Radha Krishna, but he was very keen to have a Krishna Balram temple. So he was getting very restless. Why he wanted this temple was more importantly because he wanted people from Delhi to come there, spend some time, maybe spend a day, the whole day. And in that whole day, they will get everything. They will get kirtan, they will get katha, they will get prasad. So it's like a weekend or a day well spent in Krishna consciousness, in developing Krishna consciousness for the city people who don't have access, who are always in the rat race, running after materialistic things, job, family, this, that. So he was very keen. And Gurudas was the main person. He was delaying things, some things. Prabhupada had given him clear-cut instructions that you make sure that everything is in place. But he had skipped some important things, like there were wells to be done, there were some permissions to be taken from the local authorities, and Gurudas had missed. So basically, delays were happening, and Prabhupada was getting very impatient because Prabhupada at that time had already got clearance from the International Travel Agency, who wanted, and over here there was a guest house coming up with 40 rooms. So it would have been a landmark thing, because at that time, we're talking about 1974, there were no good places to stay. So for somebody who came, to see Vrindavan, to see Mathura and around that whole, the entire place where Krishna's pastimes happened, there's no place to stay. And Prabhupada wanted this temple in the main Raman Reti area where all Krishna's pastimes had happened. So he was getting restless, but work was not happening. Prabhupada then gave him a deadline that we will launch the Krishna Balram temple in Janmashtami. You have to do all the work. And then Prabhupada went away. Again, Prabhupada had to go, he had to preach. So preaching was so important that he had to travel all the time. Uh, but he would always be in touch through his letters. So through his letters, he had given clear-cut instructions that this is, and when he went abroad, he started already telling everyone, that we're coming up with this Krishna Balram temple in Vrindavan. We're going to be inaugurating it in Janmashtami. And so he was basically building up that euphoria that everybody knows that the temple is coming up uh, in Vrindavan. So when he went abroad, he started inviting everyone. He even told all the heads of various countries, various temples, that you should come. So this was sometime in August when Prabhupada came back. Prabhupada came back, and you know what? There was a shock waiting for him. The temple which was to be launched in the Janmashtami of 1974, this was the condition in August. Everywhere there was rubble, there was incomplete work, The deities were not ready, nothing was ready. And Prabhupada was so furious. He was like, nobody wanted to be close to him at that time. Because actually you could see the anger. Normally, Prabhupada wouldn't get angry, but for Krishna's sake, anger, Prabhupada would always say that if it is used in the service of Krishna, is right and it should be done. So Prabhupada was extremely angry that what is this? How is it going to happen? I have invited everyone. I mean, the entire the name of the our society will get spoiled. The whole people from world over are coming. There are so many people already. Some 25 people had already come down when this was the situation. So Prabhupada was yelling, and Gurudas didn't know what to do. And he just kept saying that at least in Vrindavan, no one was expecting that the temple will open in Janmashtami because Vrindavan people knew. But Prabhupada had been away for so long. And the mistake that, because of fear, Gurudas, the mistake that he did is he did not inform, he did not give the correct updates. He was scared. But being scared is not a solution. So in life, kids, if you have a problem, running away from the problem is not a solution, right? Any problem, whether it is exams, which typically you all face. If you're not prepared for exam, that is not running away from that is not a solution. You have to find a way out. Either you study, either you seek help, or do something. Don't run away thinking that last day everything will become okay, right? So here he came, and he was in a fix now. Now he didn't know what to tell Prabhupada. So Prabhupada then said, is it possible by Diwali? Will it happen by Diwali? And everybody's faces were hanging, the heads were hanging low. And Prabhupada was like, what? Not even Diwali? Then you tell me, when is it going to happen? Then Yamuna Mataji and all, they said that it will easily take 7 to 8 months. Prabhupada he just walked away that time. And later on, then, so basically, devotional service is very dynamic. You need to understand that whatever you do in devotional service, whatever task you take up, it could be sweeping the floor, it could be cutting vegetables, it could be any menial service. You have to do it with full dedication. No running around, no running away, no making excuses, nothing. It has to be done to the perfection, right? So running away is not a solution. So Prabhupada walked away, and then later on, then he called everyone, then he discussed that what should be done and this and that. And then he decided, okay, we will open it in Ram Navami of 1975. Ram Navami was decided. So that's adequate time. And then he told everyone that make sure everything is done perfectly. Now, in the meantime, what happened? At that time, emergency was declared in India. If you've read in your history book that emergency was declared. So that time, when in emergency, getting basic stuff like concrete, which is the key to building, key building material, it's not available on. So there was again struggle. So next 2, 3, 4 months was such a struggle that the devotees had to do various struggle. They traveled far, far away for few gonis of concrete. It was like gold. Literally, concrete was like gold. It was so difficult. And in the meantime, Prabhupada left. Prabhupada had this extensive tour. So Prabhupada left. He went to Venezuela, Mexico, and that whole, belt of, he traveled basically around the globe, right? So he would do Europe also. He would do the American continent, North and South, and then he would on the way back to, or on the way while going or while coming to Japan also. So Prabhupada was away. Again, he didn't know, and here devotees were struggling. But anyhow, luckily towards Jan Feb, they managed to get adequate stock. And then Gurudas made sure that godowns were filled with concrete. In the meantime, every year the GBC would meet in Mayapur. So Prabhupada decided that Mayapur, everyone will meet in March. April is Ram Navami. In March, everyone will first meet in Mayapur. So in Mayapur, everyone met, and there were about 500 odd devotees that came for the Gaur Purnima festival. Everyone would come down because that was the time everyone knew that they would surely get Prabhupada's association. So when Prabhupada traveled, he would stay somewhere 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. He would just, because he had so much of preaching to do, so much of travel to do, so many centers were there all across the globe. So he would get very little time. And devotees also longed for that association. They wanted to be with him, just being around him, serving him in anywhere. If nothing, just listening to him, just seeing him, or accompanying him on his morning walk. Prabhupada was very particular about his morning walk. So a lot of devotees would accompany him, and he would. So Prabhupada managed through chain management. All right. So he had, like how we have chains, like today we have the corporate sector. You have the CEO, and then you have uh, the heads, VPs of various, then you have under them the general managers. So similarly, Prabhupada had this chain management structure wherein he knew whatever was happening everywhere, and he kept in touch with everyone through his letters. So letters were the way in which everyone felt close to him. They didn't really feel that he was away. So while he was away, also he was in touch. So anyway, so in March, the GVC, now then things started falling in place. Uh, Everyone was here, and over there, the materials were available, work was happening. So finally, 6th of April, 1975 was the time when the temple was ready. Uh, the three tall domes, beautiful structure. The guest house was complete. Um and so many people came in, so many people came in for the uh, opening of the Krishna Balram temple. And it was a great, grand affair. So after that, Prabhupada even met all the disciples, and he told them that, look, uh, sometime, because he had chastised them last time, he had really scrapped, right? So he actually told them that it's very important for a guru or parents to chastise their disciple or their children, because they have to make sure that they are on the right track and they work hard enough. Because sometimes what will happen, if we don't chastise, then faults will come up. So sometimes when your parents chastise you, scream at you, understand it is for a reason. Yes. And it is even said by Chanakya Pandit that up to the age of 16, this crucial age of 6 to 16 is the time when parents also have to discipline the children. And to discipline the children, sometimes you need to even chastise them, because kids are also rebellious. They also don't want to do certain things, or they want to do it their own way, right? You all may be experiencing that sometimes. I experienced that with my child, that you have to. So it's very important, Prabhupada said, so that the faults are rectified. The idea is not to put you down, or make you feel negative. It's more to enhance you, so that you work better, you focus better. That is very, very important. So basically, Prabhupada's determination was so great, and we understand from that uh, how, when there is a pure devotee, the power that is there in the devotee, his Satya Sankalp was there, that over here a Krishna Balram temple will come, right? From a no man's land. There was nothing at that time. Now today though is a very different affair, but in 1974, Vrindavan was essentially still a lot of forest. So there was forest everywhere. It is not what you see today. But Prabhupada had envisaged that I want a temple. So, and that's how he would always say that, I just need a few sincere people who will do the necessary. And with his blessings, with his determination, and of course with Krishna always is there for his devotees. So from nothing, he made an entire pilgrim center, beautiful temple, lovely place to stay, guest houses. So then onwards, so many people started flocking and coming. So today, though, there are 5,000 temples in Vrindavan. That's a different issue. But that time, there were not so many temples. Whatever temples were there, most of accommodation was not there. People were still not very sure, if they go there, where will they stay? What will they do? So there was a lot of ambiguity about things. And, that's why it was not it was not as popular as it is today, internationally particularly. And Prabhupada wanted people from world over to come. For him, that's how he calls it ISKCON, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. It's not for Indians or it's for a particular caste or something, nothing like that, right? So, moving ahead, another very, very important thing for Prabhupada was books. So, Prabhupada, for him, distribution of books, writing of books, publication of books, translation of books was most important. So, see, as you all know, kids, different yugas have different yuga dharmas, right? So, in Satya Yuga, it was different, and in Kali Yuga, it is essentially chanting of the holy names, right? That is what it is. But at the end, if your mind is in Krishna, you go back to Krishna. And that's what is said in Bhagavad Gita, that whatever you think of when you are leaving your body, that is the destination you will attain. But Prabhupada went on to saying that if you distributed my books, Lord Chaitanya will come personally and take you back home, back to God. That was his conviction. That was his love for books, right? So he said, it doesn't matter what else you do, whether you do any seva, if you don't do, it doesn't matter what process the devotee is following. If you just distribute my books, Lord Chaitanya will come personally. So you may be playing some musical instrument or you may be doing other things, but sometimes the consciousness goes away. But if you're just distributing books, see, books for him were recorded Sankirtan. That is the definition Prabhupada gave for books. What are books? Recorded Sankirtan. So there were at that time, around 70, 75 temples which were already in place. But still, the most important activity for Prabhupada was books and distribution of books. So let's go a little behind to 1970, around that time, and understand how the entire book printing distribution really picked up momentum. So it was the Rath Yatra of 1970 in LA, and around 10,000 people were there, and Krishna book had just come. So whatever copies Prabhupada had in his hand, he distributed everything. He gave, he sold all those books. He didn't even keep one copy for himself. Normally, the first copies you always keep, but whatever came, he just sold everything because he wanted everyone to know about the Lord. So he didn't even keep a copy. And after that, he stressed to his devotees, to his disciples, that we have to distribute books. So the devotees, following his advice, did various things. They placed ads, they approached some shops who sell books. All of that they tried, but the sales were not coming. It was just not happening. Until one day in 1971, accidentally, this is called an accidental discovery. So it so happened that these two devotees were there and they were driving back. So they had books in their hand and they were driving back. They stopped at a fuel station and they were filling in some fuel. And at the end of it, they got out and they were talking and they had these books in their hand. So they landed up talking to the fuel station owner. And they said, like, these are the books and it's all about the Lord and it talks about connection, we are the spirit souls. That entire knowledge in essence, the summary they started giving to that guy. And he also got inspired. So instead of fuel, they bartered it for books. So they did not pay hard cash. They gave books to that fuel station owner. Now that one incident gave them an idea that why don't we do unorthodox things? Why don't we do something, to which is different? And in that way, they started approaching grocery stores. And then when they approached grocery stores, the next day he landed up selling some 2-3 books. And then in San Francisco also, they started going door to door. And then they landed up selling some more books. So in this way, by mid 1971, they had various ways they had adopted of book distribution. So they tried different things. And when Prabhupada got to know, so he was very, very pleased and he would write and encourage them with his letters, right? So Prabhupada's Leelas, or his, what can you say, his pastimes are, can be say, can be divided into two categories. One is, as we call it, prakrat, which happened when he was there, and one is aprakrat, which is happening even now. And the aprakrat one is particularly the books which are still selling by the millions and transforming people to devotees even today. And as Prabhupada said, if everything were to be even destroyed, only my books remain, this movement can be started all over again. That was the conviction that Prabhupada had in his books, and he knew everything required I have put in my books. Whatever one needs to know is there in my books. That is the reason it was so very important. Prabhupada wanted to replace all the mundane literature. What is the mundane literature that we normally see? From your basic newspapers, which are filled with negativity, to all these magazines, and now though we have so much of literature which is on gadgets, all your multiple websites and app, all of it is garbage, right? Literally, it's got information which leads to more wants, right? And then it leads to more unsatisfied wants, and it leads to more misery, right? And the books work other way around. They make you understand who you are, where you have come from, where you have to go, how to surrender to the Supreme Lord. They teach you the essence that Krishna is the Supreme Controller. And once you understand that Krishna is the Supreme Controller, you're at ease. And you yourself can then preach that message very easily. So that's exactly what the devotees were doing. They tried multiple ways of doing it. And even if some devotees didn't have that, they were not good preachers, didn't matter. At least books they could distribute. That's not very difficult, right? They would just show Krishna, the beautiful paintings that were there in the books, and so many people would get attracted. And then slow and steadily, books started selling and selling, and the sales were increasing. But then one big break came. That was in the Christmas. The Christmas is the time when Europe and America, particularly what we're referring to, is in full bloom. Shops are open till 12 o'clock. Everyone is out shopping. So that Christmas weekend, in 1972, this was the next year after all these innovative ways were being tried. That Christmas weekend, everyone started going out. They would like go out in the morning and come back in the night straight. So there were so many. So one of the devotees has narrated this incident. He said that I was out on that weekend, and I managed to sell 350 units of Back to Godhead magazine and some books. So he collected, no, 650 units, sorry, of Back to Godhead magazine and some other books. He collected some $350. In that time, that was a big amount. And he was very happy. 10 o'clock till 10 o'clock, he was doing that. And he said, okay, now let me go back. Normally, devotees would come back to the temple 7 o'clock, 7, 8 o'clock. So he thought 10 o'clock ho gaya, I'll go back to the temple. And when he came back, he saw temple is empty. Only that one person is there, who's handling the temple, arranging the prasad. And he asked, where is everyone? He said, no one is back. Everyone is distributing books. So he thought he is the only one who would have achieved a great figure. But actually, everyone on that weekend was out selling books, and they did such a beautiful job that one weekend alone, they landed up selling close to 6,000 literatures. That one Christmas weekend, 6,000 literatures were sold. So Prabhupada was so pleased when he heard that, and that's how he really encouraged them that this is the way you all have to do it. This is what has to be done. Because anyone who's serious in Krishna consciousness becomes more serious by understanding the philosophy. And that typically comes when you read. And Prabhupada has written so many books, and so many books are so simple. And Prabhupada would say it is because of your enthusiasm that the books are selling. Now, when such letters would come, the disciples would get even more enthusiastic. that Prabhupada has written. Prabhupada is so happy. Their objective was to please the Guru, right? Because when the Guru is pleased, he showers his mercy. And that mercy is magical. It's not simple to sell books, right? Even now the Gita Jayanti month is on, and we're outside temples also we stand. And we stand outside temples, it's very difficult to convince people to buy books. They'll just walk away. But and this is, we're talking about Americans who don't even know anything about Krishna, right? To sell to them, it's difficult. But the enthusiastic disciples did such a marvelous job that, and Prabhupada, when he wrote these letters, that further infused so much of life in them. So it was wonderful. So there was this one devotee who used to do painting and all of these things in the temple. When he saw so much of enthusiasm and when he saw that everybody's coming home so late, he also joined that gang of book distributors. He also wanted to be a distributor. So, and there was this one more devotee. His name was Tripurari. He set a new record in one day. In one day, this devotee Tripurari landed up selling 200 Bhagavatams. That was a unique record in itself. And this person had no formal training, nothing, huh? Just enthusiastic, learned on the job. So in this way, kids, you'll understand how we also can help Prabhupada in this mission. So right now also Gita Jayanti month is on. What you all can do is keep Prabhupada's books at your house. Like you see behind there. So, these are Bhagavatams and some other books. So when you keep it, anybody who comes to meet me will always see these books and he'll ask me, what are these books? So when they see so many books, they are very intrigued to know what it is, why it is. And that's what we want. We want people to ask these questions. The problem is today, nobody wants to ask any questions. Everyone is so busy in their own. Typically, they'll ask questions about what is the latest movie you watch? What's the new Netflix series? Where did you go for holiday? Typically, these are the only questions will be asked. What is the new dress you bought? Where did you eat? What did you do? Those are the kind of questions. But nobody will ask serious questions. And we want them to ask. And serious questions are very generic questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Where do I go? Why is this world like this? Why are some people suffering? Why are some people born rich? Why are some people born on the roads? Are these not the questions to ask? We see it all around us every day, but still we are blind to it, right? Only when that realization comes in us, right, then we will ask the real questions. And as Prabhupada also said, these are the real questions of life. In his book, Perfect Question, Perfect Answer, if you'll get a chance, it's a nice small book, you all must read. He gives all these examples and he's had these conversations with reporters. It's beautiful to see how simply he puts it in his books. That these are the questions to be asked. And when you ask this, that is when your true human life starts. Otherwise, what is the difference between us and animals? They also eat, they also sleep, they also have children, they also do that, they also enjoy. What is the difference? The difference is the consciousness. A tiger cannot get up one morning and say, today I'm turning vegetarian, I'm only going to have grass. He cannot say that. But we can decide, right? What I want to eat, what I don't want to eat, etc., etc. So, since we have this human birth, which is very, very rare, we have to utilize it in the right things. And Prabhupada, he's our Param Guru. So we need to work towards what he wanted, what he envisaged, right? Today, millions of copies are sold. Whatever little contribution we can do, we must try. If nothing else, my humble request to all of you is at least keep a copy in your houses so that people come, they ask questions, you answer them. Now you know everything, right? You all have been hearing such beautiful lectures. So many lectures you all attend. There's so many programs that are conducted for you all. So you all have that idea. So you all please try. See, Prabhupada said that, the Krishna, what is Krishna most pleased with? Krishna is most pleased when you connect a lost soul to him. All of us are like lost souls. When we are connected to our Lord, that is when our true path begins. So if we just manage to connect some people to our back to the Lord, that will be the best service. And that can be done through the books. Otherwise, what is the modern society today? Tell me. It is suffering from two major problems. What are those major concerns? And this is what has to be driven away. So the two major grievances of modern society, one is that eh, they think consciousness comes from matter, right? And second is they think when this life is over, everything is over. These are the two basic, you can say, ignorances that have to be driven out, right? And this can happen when people are well read, people know about what life is, particularly the leaders. As they say, even in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, what the leaders do, the others follow. It is very, very critical for leaders to understand this. Otherwise, this modern society, what is it today? You tell me, what do you see around you? Don't you see all of this, what we have put on the screen? Everyone's lost in gadgets. Everyone is in their own selfish world. No one is really helping anyone. Everyone is moving towards the wrong things like intoxication, depression, because of which then so many other even physical problems in the body are arising. Because negativity breeds negativity, right? What is cancer? Cancer is when your good cells die, and new good cells, our body keeps generating new cells when it doesn't. So when a lot of dead cells they collect, that's when you get all these tumors. So this is the modern society today. We are all like blind people. And who can help a blind person cross the road? It has to be someone who doesn't have who's also not blind, right? But the problem today is that even our leaders, most of the people who are running the society, who are running nations, they are blind. They are blind to the realities of life. They are blind to what the essence of life is. So if a blind person is being helped by a blind person, then what is the sense? So today, even most of us are just blindly following, like COVID times today, right? Everyone is taking vaccine. So there are a lot of theories. Some are saying it's good, some are saying bad. But what happens when leaders do it? Everyone follows. So if it's a blind man who's being crossing, who's helped to cross a road with another blind man, you can know what the situation will be. So it is very important that our leaders also understand, and they will understand when we try and share more about books, let more and more people know how it is to be done, and whatever we can do, we should try and do. And spiritual life is not simple. Distribution books is not simple, right? There's a lot. So like you have happiness and sadness in everything. Even here, you'll have days when you don't manage to do everything. But the key is everything is done for spiritual pleasure. Look at those disciples who are out 16 hours, 18 hours doing that. In the olden times, kings were very sensible. The Dharmraj, like look at the Pandavas, for example. So Arjun, you think, was fighting for the kingdom? No, he was fighting because Krishna told him to. And when Krishna wound up his pastimes, what did the Pandavas do? They also renounced everything and they headed towards the Himalayas. So they were not attached. They were doing what made the Lord happy. And we also have to try and do that. So what makes the Lord happy? Connecting someone to Krishna, right? Essentially, as I was telling you, we are lost souls. We need to get back to where we belong. So that can be done with books. So coming back again to the books and the various ways of distribution, what they were doing. So LA was called the New Dwarka, and San Francisco was called the New Jagannath Puri. And Prabhupada himself used to call, what? He used to call his books bombs. And he would say that just go dropping bombs, like how when there is a war, people would drop bombs, right? Of course, that is a negative thing. Here, the bombing is for waking up the consciousness. So, we are all like commanders. We have to work like commanders, and we have to obey Prabhupada's mission and achieve Prabhupada's mission. So anyway, there were a host of strategies. As I was telling you, that these young disciples would do. So they would go to the airports, and at airports they would find people sitting. Again, start reading from the book, showing pictures, whatever worked, you know. And but Prabhupada would always say, never lie, never say anything, only to sell books. Sometimes even shopkeepers, they would just lie to sell something or do something like that. Prabhupada would say, never lie, just sell the books on their merit. There's so much of strength, there's so much of uh, you can say value in the books. You don't need to use false mediums of doing that. And a lot of people would see that the devotees are so sincere. Unko dekh ke hi only they would buy books. When people would see that how sincere these people are and how happy they are, they are out in the sun, they are out holding so many books in their bag. So normally one disciple would take an entire bag and be out the whole day. So utna stock leke jana padta hai. You have to take that much stock, and carrying books on your bag and then walking around so much, trying to sell books. It was not easy. It was definitely not easy. But anyway, looking at the seriousness on the faces of the disciples, people would buy books. And then later on, a new strategy was used. So they would have buses that moved around, stocked with books. They would stop at various places, put up a little counter outside and sell books. So it was called the bus party. So this was another, the Greyhound buses were bought. And bus party was so successful. Initially they started with one bus, then two buses, and then there were multiple buses. And little later in 1974, they started another unique way of distributing books that was called the BBT library book. So they would target universities, colleges, universities, and ensure that the entire set of books is placed over there so that more and more people can read. So essentially, there were three, you can say, parties who were focusing. One is that LA party, the Radha Damodar party. The LA Temple party, the Radha Damodar party, and the bus party, the BBT party, sorry. And the BBT party was led by that the gentleman who had sold those 200 Srimad Bhagavatam, that Tripurari. So he led that party. So three parties were there. The buses, Radha Damodar party, that was the buses, the LA Temple, and the BBT for the universities. So between these three also there was competition. But that competition was not like what we see today, or what, it's not that cutthroat competition. This was competition when whatever you see the other person doing, you are inspired and you are happy for the other person. Because the ultimate goal is what of everyone? Distributing books, pleasing Srila Prabhupada, pleasing Krishna. So it was healthy competition. And that's it. The essence remains: the quickest way to please Krishna is to direct another person to Krishna consciousness. Just remember this, kids. For yourselves also, that if you just manage to do that, it will really, really be amazing. So, and more importantly, what happens? We automatically get purified when we do all of this. All these things, when we do it, this is purification. Even the hard work, the struggle that we face on the roads distributing, it's actually purifying us, right? Now 1975 April came. So books is of course the key. You understand that, and has to be done. Now coming back to where we were. Prabhupada had traveled. He was traveling. Why? Because he wanted to give time for the Krishna Balram temple to be opened, right? So we come to April 1975, which was finally the grand opening of the Krishna Balram temple. Now the temple was opened. The governor came. He was the chief guest. It was an amazing opening where everything went on well, and obviously, finally, all the disciples were like relieved. Ho gaya, everything fine, and they were like rejoicing. So Prabhupada in the evening calls them and he does a meeting, and he tells, "Don't sit back and relax in your success." All the devotees are like this. Abhi, what next, yeah? We've just finished such a mammoth task. What next does Prabhupada have in the pipeline? And then Prabhupada said again, I am sleeping only 3 hours. Why am I doing that? I am doing that so that I can translate books. I can write books. I am doing all that, but there are still my entire Chaitanya Charitamrita 17 volumes is lying unpublished. What am I awake for? What am I doing all this hard work for? And then devotees were like this. So then, so earlier, uh, the production was happening very slow of all these publications. They were coming out. One book would come out in 4 months. So Prabhupada said, as I was telling you, focus always remained on books. Temples were coming up, everything was happening fine. But books were the criteria for him, publishing as well as his translations. So his only thing was, I want to finish Bhagavatam, the entire Bhagavatam before I depart from this world. So he shifted the entire BVT to LA. Now in LA, a modern setup was done for printing, right? And that setup made the publication 4 times faster. So where there was one book coming out in 4 months, now after that whole setup, one book came out in 1 month, right? So when Prabhupada was there, he was informed that, so Rameshwar was the person handling it. And he said, now Prabhupada, we are at good speed. We can come up with one book. We 4 times faster we are. We can come up with one book in 1 month. So Prabhupada looked at him and he said, one book in 1 month. We have 17 volumes of Chaitanya Charitamrita. That means 17 months. So Prabhupada was like, I don't have so much time and I have too much to do. Said, impossible. I mean, he didn't say impossible. He said, no, it will not work. I want it happen in 2 months. 17 volumes to be published in 2 months. Then the disciple, he said, impossible. And Prabhupada looked at him. And you know what Prabhupada said? Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in the fool's dictionary. And then these people are looking at each other that what are we supposed to do? And Prabhupada said, nothing doing. 2 months is the only time. I want everything out. I want the entire set of Chaitanya Charitamrita out in 2 months. These disciples were like, so they had worked 4 times faster and they had come to one book in. Now they had to come from one book in a month. They had to do 2 books in 17 months. That means 34 times faster. So when they heard that, and Prabhupada then went away, he continued his activities. And here these two, Rameshwar and Radha Vallabh, they were speechless and they are like, they ran back to the printing press, got the entire team in place, sit down, and then they were racking their head. How do we do this? Prabhupada said, impossible is a word in the fool's dictionary. We can't do that. We can't annoy our spiritual master. And they all understood that, how passionate Prabhupada is. So there's no way they are going to say no to him. There's nothing like that, So it was just about how they're going to do it. So they sat on the drawing board, like, typically how you make a plan. Okay, this to be done, that to be done, this to be done. So after 2 days or something like that, they reverted back. That Prabhupada, we will do it, but you have to be here for 2 months. So Prabhupada would travel aggressively, So he said, why am I needed? He said, no, that the editor would need to consult you continuously. So you need to be here. So that's one thing. So Prabhupada said, okay, fine. I will stay here, no problem. Whatever you need, I will be here, because he knew it's so important for him. And the second thing, Prabhupada, the disciple said that, Prabhupada, one more thing is that in all these books, there are a lot of paintings that are there, right? So the painters will not be able to come so far. So what we are doing is we are hiring multiple painters. So the quality may not be as good as you expected. Prabhupada said, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Fine. If you want, instead, you supplement it with some photographs. You put photographs, no problem. Of places, of people, whatever you want to do, you do that. It's fine. But publish it. So these two conditions were set. and then everyone rolled in. What happens, we will discuss tomorrow. Now, tomorrow is the last session. Uh, so we will go in detail about this and more in tomorrow's session. But essentially, to summarize, what we discussed today, Prabhupada's 3 projects were very key, right? Mayapur, as we discussed, Krishna Balram Temple, and Jew. Now, unfortunately, Jew was one which took so much of time, so much of energy from 1971. Prabhupada would sometimes say that, will I live to see the Jew temple? So, but his focus was on this. Besides that, preaching, traveling the world around, preaching, getting more and more people connected, getting more and more centers set up. And most important was that to ensure that all of this happens when the books are sold, right? Because if you see Prabhupada's model, we've discussed this earlier, sell books, whatever money you get, plow it back into spreading Krishna consciousness. That is the key, right? So we understand, kids, from this that how when someone is sincere, how Krishna reciprocates. Look at the disciples, right? From those 1-2 books a day, how Krishna reciprocated, how he got. Now, all this doesn't happen. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is planned by him, right? It is only a matter of effort and sincerity. When he sees that you're putting in effort and sincerity, you will see the reciprocation coming in from his side, right? So Prabhupada ensured that his disciples were always connected to him because they needed that kind of uh, charging. Like how today our phone batteries need constant charging, we also need constant charging, right? Right. And typically, when you get a pure devotee, either association, any form, if you get a personal one-to-one, it's great. If you don't, whatever connect you get, right? In this case, it was the letters of Prabhupada. So when you get that, that's when you can grow in your spiritual consciousness. And that's exactly what happened with all these devotees who put in their heart and soul. Imagine something like this. They already work 4 times faster, and now they took on this mammoth task of getting the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita ready in 2 months flat because their guru had told them, "I just want it." And when they saw the urgency on Prabhupada's face, they just did it. And even in the case of Krishna Balram Temple, there were so many. So it was not that anyone was lethargic or something. Yeah, there may have been some errors, which is possible by anyone. But when there was an emergency, how they ensured that whatever is needed to meet deadlines, as I was telling you, concrete in emergency, nothing functions. It's like lockdown, you all have all seen lockdown. How in lockdown it's so difficult to function. But still, if you have a target to achieve, what will happen? Sincerity, hard work, dedication. And as I mentioned earlier, also, Krishna consciousness is a very dynamic process. It is not laid back. Everything is dynamic, action oriented. Karna hai. We have to do it, right? And do it why? For the pleasure of Guru and Gauranga. On that note, I'll end today's session. If anyone has any questions pertaining to today's session, you're most welcome to ask. And tomorrow, please be there because it will be the last session of this wonderful series of Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrit. Any questions anyone has? So please feel free to put your hands up. So you can raise your hands or you can put in the chat box.